Joining us right now to weigh in is former special assistant to President Trump and former press secretary to Vice President Pence, Marc Lotter. Marc, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Well, that was an interesting tweet. He's basically making it clear to this president where Mexico stands on this. What's your take?
One way or the other, Mexico is going to pay for the wall. They may not actually cut a check, but the president and our country, and given the size of our economy, we hold a lot of leverage points. And as we've seen with so many other things, the president will use all of those levers to make sure that Mexico is financially supporting that wall.
So what do you mean? He's just going to put something in the NAFTA deal? How, one way or another, what does that mean? How are they going to pay for it?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. There could be something as it relates to NAFTA. There could be some other options on the table. But make no mistake that they will fund that wall, just like the president said, and we'll see it play out as the negotiations continue.
The question is, are they going to enjoy it, like he said?
They may not enjoy it, but they're definitely going to do it.
They will enjoy it. That's hilarious.
You know, I dial tested this speech last night, and I wanted to see how voters were reacting. We saw the independents are really softening towards the president right now. They're not sure he's going to get these deals done. Some of his rhetoric is wearing a little bit thin with them. You still believe that things are going to get done. And what do you think this is going to mean for the midterms?
I think the American people are seeing things getting done, and I think this is also, sometimes I compare it to like road construction. In the beginning, we've got to shut some lanes down, maybe redirect traffic. That causes a little bit of angst. But when you get through that initial push and you get to the other side, once it's done, it's smooth sailing. People like it. So I'm not completely surprised by it. But as we see more and more success on the economy, as we see more success because of the president's leadership on the world stage, I think people are going to get comfortable with that, and they're going to like the results.
Mark, it's Dagan McDowell. In terms of the Democrats are going to try and run on, we've already seen this from, say, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, rising gasoline prices, premium increases for people's health insurance. We're going to find out about those, just like we did right before the election in 2016 in October, right before the midterms. President Trump has signaled that the White House is going to announce some plan to fix ObamaCare. But can that come, despite the repeal of the individual mandate, can that really come in time to ease the financial pain of people who are paying more and more and more for their health insurance?
It's something we have to do. It's something we've been talking about doing for years. We've got to get Republicans on board, particularly in the Senate, with a plan. But this is also, I think, one of the broader points that we can see from a growing economy and more jobs as more people are getting their health insurance, hopefully through their employers, because we've got growing jobs, lower unemployment, more people getting access to that through their employers. The impact on Obamacare, fewer people are going to be getting it on the individual marketplace. So I think that is a good thing. But ultimately, we've got to fix Obamacare. We need Republicans in the Senate to do it. And I think the push this fall will be perfectly timed as those new premium announcements come out.
So I have a question about Trump's speech again last night. He went and he talked about the Democrat opponent, and he said, "I never heard of this guy. Who is he? He's an absolute total tool of Chuck Schumer." Goes on, this guy is a pretty popular guy in Tennessee, and he's somewhat of a conservative Democrat. There's probably a lot of issues that they cross over, somewhat like they did in Pennsylvania when you look at what happened with Connor Lamb. Do you think there's any risk in being too dismissive of the Democrat candidates going into the midterms?
I don't think so. And this is an election season, so you're going to get those kinds of comments. The fact of the matter is, as we have seen, you can go down and look at the new Senate Democrat in Alabama, who is immediately lining up with Chuck Schumer and the Democrats and voting against the things that the president and the people of Alabama want. So I think it's very important for people in Tennessee to realize if they send President to the United States Senate, he is not going to be an ally of the president. He's going to be an ally of Chuck Schumer, which means you're going to get votes against confirmation on judges and appointees. He'll be lockstep against the Tax Cut and Reform Act like the Democrats were. And they just need to realize that despite what he says or his record, when they get to Washington, they often do something else.
So you think it will be more important around the midterms to side with President Trump than appearing that you're against the president? You think that's going to help the Republicans in November?
In places like Tennessee, I do. And obviously, every district is different. Every state is different. But Tennessee was a very strong supporting state of the president back in 2016. We've seen that continue. I was there a couple of times with the vice president when I served as his press secretary. They're very excited down in Tennessee for the things that are going on. And we're seeing this play out across much of the Midwest and in the middle part of the country, where you have people like Joe Donnelly, Claire McCaskill in Missouri, and many others who are endangered Democrats because the people they represent support this president and what he's doing.
And that's right.
And they've
actually agreed with the president on some of these issues going against their own party in terms of Donnelly and Heitkamp. Let me switch gears and ask you about North Korea. And we're going to ask Kevin McCarthy, the GOP majority leader on the House, when he joins us about all of this in the midterms as well. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo sets to meet with North Korea's top nuclear weapons negotiator today, General Kim Jong-chol, in New York. The meeting coming as the North Koreans and the U.S. work to settle on an agenda for that June 12th summit between the two countries happening in Singapore. Both countries prioritizing how quickly North Korea should denuclearize. Mark, what do you anticipate from these talks today? What would be success?
I think ultimately we need to get a deal with North Korea that leads to the denuclearization of that peninsula. The president's been very clear on that. The maximum pressure and sanctions continue on North Korea until we reach that goal. And it's really up to North Korea to decide how quickly they want to rejoin the world community, have the sanctions lifted. But there's not going to be any half measures here. And the president is going into this with his eyes wide open. He knows North Korea's history of saying one thing, accepting our bribes to come to the table or to make some deal on paper, but they do something else behind the scenes. This is a president who's not going to be played in this respect. So these are going to be very important conversations, but ultimately it's going to come down to the president and the chairman sitting down. And one way or the other, North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons. We'd like to have them do that around the negotiating table with and rejoin the world community.
And real quick on China, yesterday we got this press release from the White House. It was a statement on the steps to protect domestic technology and intellectual property from China's discriminatory and burdensome trade practices, is the headline on the White House press secretary report. How are they going to enforce that? I mean, we know that China has been forcing technology transfer. We know they've been stealing intellectual property. I give the White House credit for coming out with this statement because that's the more important issue, not buying more agricultural products. But how are you going to enforce this, you think?
I think much of that's going to be handled through the investment restrictions and some of the other things that are going on. But this is, as you well know, and I know it's been discussed on your show so many times, this is one of the biggest challenges we face as we head into negotiations with China. They have their 2025 plan that they're trying to take over and gain ownership through our technology, our patents, and our innovation. They're trying to corner the market on the leading innovative technologies of the future, and it's just not something we can do long term.
Yeah, and I don't know, some people might say that the U.S. is already behind the curve on this, that China has already transferred technology, and they are poised to become the leader in AI, the leader in blockchain technology. So we'll see about that. Mark, it's good to have you on the program today. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Marc Lotter joining us there.